again, guys. It is yours truly once again back at it for whiskey review number 91. We are inching closer to number 100. Thank you very much, you all, for joining me tonight. And we are going to dive into Old Forester 1910, the fourth and final release in the Whiskey Row series that the folks at Old Forester and Brown-Forman have gifted us with since 2014, when the original release of 1870 came out, followed by 1897, the famous 1920 release that was just magnifique, and now this one, 1910. And if you haven't got a chance to procure a bottle of one of these, unfortunately, it's temporarily sold out because of the success of the series in general. In 1920 specifically, the latest release, they anticipated high sales, but they didn't anticipate enough. So they ran out really quickly. They're working on getting another batch out, I believe, in the maybe late spring, early summer here of 2019. So keep your eyes open for that, and may want to talk to a liquor store manager or owner about maybe holding on to a bottle for you. So let's get into the nitty gritty on 1910. So to kind of follow suit, it's very similar in terms of the look. It kind of looks like the 1920, but instead of the yeah, actually, it's kind of the same color. That one maybe a little more teal, and this one's maybe kind of a baby blue in terms of the ribbon. They're calling this one Old Fine Whiskey. So if you're like me, and you probably are, you wouldn't be watching this, whiskey lovers, bourbon lovers, we really like a good story. And Old Forester's kind of capitalizing on a good story. What happened is in the fall, I think it was October of 1910, they had a fire on their bottling line. They had a vat of matured whiskey ready to go and ready to be bottled, and had nowhere to bottle it. So what they did was they just kind of threw it back into a new charred oak barrel, kind of accidentally stumbling across the whole double-barreled thing that you see, exploding across bourbon now. I mean, Jim Beam's done it, Woodford's done it. You name it, someone's got double-barreled. Michter's has done it. So they kind of accidentally stumbled across that. The second barrel, they put it in, kind of gave it a little more sweetness, darkened the color of it a little bit. And again, sort of a happy accident. That's sometimes what happens in innovation. So Old Forester, present day, tried to kind of recreate that. So what they did was they put it in wood at 100 proof, and then they went ahead and double matured it, double barreled it into a barrel that they describe as, what is the word they use? It was almost like incinerated, I think is the word they use. Like, it was so torched, it was so charred that it was almost not functional. So, that came out at 93 proof and has a lot of sweet caramelly goodness from what I'm reading. From a proof standpoint, it's kind of right in the middle. The 1870 was at a 90, the 1897 was at 100, the 1920 was at 115, and this comes in at 93. From a price standpoint, this one's like at $55, I believe. So a little bit cheaper than the 1920, a little bit more in some of the early releases, so kind of right on par where you'd expect it to be. So yeah, from a mash bill standpoint, let's talk about what we're talking about here. So we have a 72% corn, 18% rye, and then a 10% malted barley, so a little corn heavy, which is going to help hopefully with that sweetness. As you can see, as I just ripped off the cellophane here, this is my first sample of this. And as you guys know, I like to say this every so often, in case maybe you're a first-time viewer. Not the recommended way to sample whiskey is to pour it, drink it, and then immediately make a call on what you think about it. Best practice is to let a whiskey breathe at least for a few minutes before you kind of jump right into it. Preferably, longer than that. Rule of thumb is, maybe a minute per year of age. That just kind of keeps you on task. This one, speaking of age, is the non-age stated bourbon. What I've heard, it's about a 4-year-old bourbon that then they added another almost year in that extremely charred, kind of alligator charred barrel. So as you see, I kind of snuck a sniff there. And by the way, I'm just coming off of this Crown Royal Peach review, so I just kind of wanted to wash my mind and palate clean of that flavor. So I wanted to get into more of a traditional bourbon. This is one I haven't tried, haven't sipped. There are so many bottles behind me and underneath me and next door and in front of the camera that I haven't tried because I'm a loyal YouTube reviewer and I want to do this review of so many of these bottles. I'm looking at Old Elk. I'm looking at the Clover that we were supposed to do a long time ago. Shame on me for that. I'm looking at a Wilderness Trail. I'm looking at Cream of Kentucky. I'm looking at Clyde Made's Cash Strength. I'm looking at the new Michter's Toasted Barrel. I'm looking at, I could go on and on and on. One of the barrel bourbons I picked up. So much stuff to talk about. Oh, the Red Spot Irish whiskey. I'm extremely excited about. A couple beautiful rums I'm excited about. So, but again, I really try to minimize that so I can give you guys my first impression right here, live, so to speak, in front of the camera. Holy goodness, that is an interesting smell. Super sweet, light. This is something I don't think I've ever used in a bourbon or probably whiskey review. Strawberry. Maybe like Big League Chew. Another thing, when we're talking about tasting and how you're supposed to taste and not taste, you're certainly not kind of supposed to stick your nose into a Glencairn especially. But I don't know if I just don't have a great sense of smell or what, but it doesn't seem to blow my palate out. You're supposed to sort of, a couple inches above, maybe rest it on sort of your upper lip. But I kind of just like putting the old beak in there and giving it a smell. But for what it's worth, not necessarily the recommended way to nose a whiskey. But this smells tremendous. Really sweet corn, like cream corn. And it's unbelievably dark. I mean, that second aging in that incinerated barrel, as they refer to it as, an alligator char barrel. I mean, this is. I mean, it looks like 25, 30-year-old bourbon. It's incredibly dark. It almost looks like a really dark sipping rum. So with no further ado, let's give this a taste. Look at that, by the way. All my yapping, I did let this air out for a few minutes, so it wasn't that far off. Very interesting. 93 proof is a nice spot for me, personally. And that sort of continues to progress and change depending on age and depending on mash bill and all those sorts of things. But personally, there are some whiskeys, Weller Antique, Old Ezra, the 7-year-old barrel strength at 117, Weller Antique's 107, some of the Maker's Mark cask strength. There are definitely whiskeys 105 proof plus, that I love. I think are beautifully crafted and wouldn't have it any other way. 1920 that we just talked about. But oftentimes I really like that 90 to 100 strength where I don't get blown out. I don't have to cut it with any water. This is really nice. This is good proof. Get a ton of different flavors on this one. The nose, I think, is even more unique, at least what I'm getting from that first taste. But again, the first taste is not the one you want to review a whiskey on. You never want to score anything. You don't want to draw an opinion. Matter of fact, you want to come back to things before you really draw opinions. But for the hell of this, I give you guys a first take after a few sips. Got some of that corniness, that cream corn flavor there. Tons of vanilla. A little charcoal, a little bit like chewing tobacco, like sweet, like the beech nut. Unbelievably buttery mouthfeel. Soft. A little bit of leather. Finishes a little harsher than you would think. Overall, I like this, guys. I do. I'm not in love with it. I would have to say it's probably either I think 1920 is my favorite. Probably my second or third favorite. I personally like the 1870 in this kind of here. I don't know. I like it. I don't love it. So with that being said, I'll give this a 7.5. You know, certainly wouldn't hesitate to add it to your shelf. It may hit you a little bit better than it did me, but yeah, I'll give this a 7.5. Solid addition. Like I said, hopefully you guys and gals that are looking to complete that horizontal, so to speak, in terms of the set, the whiskey row set. Hopefully you'll see that on store shelves again here very, very soon. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really happy to be back in the game, so to speak, and I'll see you very soon with another one of the reviews with one of these spirits probably that we just talked about. And until then, as always, until next time, glasses up.